Uh-huh. Right. So there are three questions. Human relationships, are they all about power? Why is it that human beings are so foolish? Or why is it that we do foolish things? And since we have a tendency of forgetting, and we usually forget things that are difficult and require effort and sacrifice, is there a way to overcome forgetfulness? And I suppose remember what we promised ourselves. Is that? See, that's why you come to this class. Um, okay. Yeah. So let's talk about the first question, which is about why is it that you're so dumb? Okay. You know, I remember reading somewhere in the dialogues of Plato where Socrates argues that no one really desires to be stupid, no one really desires to do anything that's wrong, no one ever wants to do anything that brings harm to themselves, their body, their emotions, their minds, their life. All of us assume that what we're doing is the bringer of pleasure, health, stability of sorts, that there are no consequences. And then time passes and you come to realize that, and you don't have to get caught by Satan or by God or by Jesus Christ. Something about it just comes out and says, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have done that, you know. The truth is, we walk into life missing so many important components. We just don't have the knowledge. You know, we don't really know how to write life because, for the most part, it's the first time. The other aspect is we just enter into different stages of life all the time. You know, you're a child, and all of a sudden you see your kids, you see your buddies having a bike, and you've never ridden a bike, and you want to ride a bicycle. And you assume that just because you have a bike, you can ride the bike. That's actually not true. So what happens is you have the desire, your desire is fulfilled, but you've never ridden a bike. So you get on it and you fall. And, you know, you look at your parents, they have a relatively decent relationship, or maybe not. And you get to be 18, 19, 20, and your organism just goes out there, looks at someone, you know, falls in love or becomes attracted. And you spend some time and you invest emotions, fantasies with this other person. It's very much like riding a bicycle. You've never been there, you've never done that, you've never been in this particular romantic relationship, but you are now. And the assumption that you and I have is that the emotions will carry us, that life is not going to touch any of these profoundly sacred emotions that live inside us. We're always going to be nice, compassionate, forgiving. Everything that we do is the outcome of love and care for this other person. And time passes, you realize, no, you don't really love this person as much as you did before. And in the end, you realize you just don't like him at all. But you just, you know, what else can you do? It's like having a pet. You don't really want to take your dog out for a walk every single day, but what else can you do? You just do it. And so we have no choice but to oftentimes make dumb mistakes. You know, and add to it the fact that, you know, we are not wired to be reflective. If you want to be philosophical, if you want to think deeply about things, you will paralyze your life. Because thinking about philosophical things in a very intense and meaningful way, I'm not talking about coming to class, I'm talking about René Descartes. And even if you were to take René Descartes seriously, the 16th century or 17th century French philosopher, just, you know, his first book of Meditations, I don't know who I am. So if someone asks me what your name is, I say it's doubtful. I don't know. My name is doubt. Well, do you love your companion? I don't really know what love is. I don't know who I am. So no, I don't know. But what are you doing? Well, I have a job, but I'm not really quite sure if it fits me. And all of a sudden you realize everything about your life, because you lack clarity, is consumed by doubt. And doubt is painful, you know. So because I think intense and passionate and honest reflection counters life. In other words, it goes the opposite direction of life. Life is about business. It's not about having a meaningful job. It's about having a roof over your head. It's not about falling in love with your companion. It's just about, someone has just grown on you now. It's not about what am I doing in life. The question is, what should I do if I don't do this? If I don't get a job, if I don't go to school, if I don't do this, if I don't do that, what else am I going to do? Stay in bed all day for what? And so you have no choice but to kind of always be on a very, very superficial layer of life, because it makes life function. Next time you want to sit and write an essay for any of your classes, he's taking a stats class. It's funny. A 60-year-old man taking a stats class, a class for which he doesn't care. And yet he knows that it's a stepping stone. But add to it, there's another layer. Well, he's no longer 20. He's on borrowed time, very much like Amir. Does he really have the time? Is it really fair for him, for his body, for his emotions, if he was to be a Christian, let's just say, for the kingdom of God that lives inside him, for his soul, to kind of just put everything on pause and take a stats class for what? Well, have a friend sign up for the class in your name. Let your friend take the exam. Call it plagiarism, call it what you will. And you realize almost, if you were to be very reflective about the things that you do, almost all of life becomes absurd and ridiculous. You paralyze yourself. So because we're not trained in thinking deeply about things, and we are, on a very superficial layer of life, we just do things. And then time passes, and something about us kind of wakes up, becomes aware, and says, no, you catch yourself. And you say, no, that was pretty stupid. And one of the nice things about the prodigal son story in the New Testament, the problem is not sinning. The problem is not missing the mark. The problem is not doing wrong things. The problem oftentimes for many of us is that, can you catch your mistake before you're way too old? Can you repent before you're way too old? Do you have a father? Do you have a foundation? Do you have a home? Do you have a father to whom you can go and say, sorry, Dad, I'm really, really sorry for having messed up my life and creating so much pain for you and your mom, and mom? Is there a God you can go to? Do you have a foundation? Is there anything that you have in your history where you can go back and rest? Because we have no choice but to sin. This is my first time living life. I am going to make all sorts of crazy mistakes. If you have a child, they are going to pee in their bed. They are going to scream. They are going to waste. That is what comes with just children. And I think what comes with being a human being is you have no choice but to make stupid mistakes. But that's not the issue. The issue is, are you able at a certain point to catch your mistakes, to be able to look at your mistakes, to be able to live with the emotions of your own observations? Are you able to kind of forgive yourself? Are you able to be okay with someone else not forgiving you for having made a mistake? Will you be able to come to a place of acceptance that, yes, I'm a dumbass, I did A, B, C, D, that's just what happened, okay? The other person is not going to say, it's okay, I forgive you. Screw that. Can I forgive myself? Is there a home you can go to? Do you have a foundation within where you have this understanding? You say, okay, I went out there, A, B, C, D happened because this is just the way my organism functions. It is such a difficult place to be. And so You know, one of the things that we are not told in the prodigal son story is that when you bring that story to the 21st century people, especially in industrialized, environments like America, many places of Europe, your parents divorce at a young age, so there goes your physical home. The culture doesn't give you myths, stories to live by. Most of it is consumed by Snoop Dogg and Miley Cyrus. Cheap garbage that everybody just swallows because they give you pleasure so easily and so quickly, that social norms are out the window now. So when something happens, well, the culture hasn't given you stories that tell you what makes you human and why we make mistakes. And just in case you do make mistakes and you catch yourself having made a mistake, all these emotions that come out of you, how do you deal with them? The culture doesn't give you those things. Well, you don't have any physical parents to go to so they can take care of you. You want to go to church, but now you live in a secularized environment. Everything has been turned into tables and chairs, meat. That's it. So when there is broken parts inside you, you need a home to go to. You need a mom, you need a dad, you need a religion, you need friends, you need something that will bring peace and comfort to your life. And there is nothing. So what you have is an avalanche of just things that we do that are just stupid and dumb. And they have a snowball effect. We have a tendency, because our culture is not very reflective, not very philosophical, mistakes just get added up on other mistakes. And by the time you're 25, 30, 40, 50, you have a closet. You have many closets filled with mistakes, and you have no idea how to deal with them. You're even frightened to open any of the doors because they're just going to overpower you. The point is, you can't walk away from doing stupid things. We are human beings and we have no choice but to do stupid things. I have no idea what's going to happen to me, how I'm going to react when I get really, really sick. That's not my stage just yet. If I go to the doctor and he tells me, well, your stage 2 has turned to stage 4 cancer and you have 6 months to live, I don't know what I'm going to do with that news. Unless I have dealt with loss. My father died, my mom died, my siblings died, my wife died, and there came a point where I sat and said, okay, it seems everybody loses something in life. What lives inside loss? How do people deal with loss? How is it that I come to be attached to my dad? In attachment, what sort of emotions are created? In those stories that are created through attachments, what are the hopes? What are the expectations? Who do I become in relation to those attachments? I become a son. My father has a house. I go to his house. It becomes a home. Now we sit and have a good time. Once I lose that, what happens to me? And if I know what loss is, there are tons of people who die on this planet on a daily basis. I don't care for them. There's a reason. I don't have a relationship with them. So it seems that I feel loss only to things I have relationships with. So since again, we have no choice but to do unreflective things, and then ultimately they come back to bite us. The only thing you can really hope for is build yourself a life, a physical life, an intellectual life, an emotional life. You're not religious? Fake it. Start reading the New Testament until you get to certain passages where certain emotions begin to be generated inside you. In times of crisis, go to the church. And the building itself remembers those verses you read in the Gospel of John, for example. That's all you need. That's a good home to have. If you have a mom, if you have a dad, and certain parts of your life are broken, and you realize that, that you have no friends, there are no books to read, you don't want to do therapy, nothing is working out for you, get in your car, get on the Greyhound bus, go and visit your mom, sit with her and talk to her about the broken parts. That's your home. If you are creative and you write beautiful poems, and your heart is broken or you're suffering from confusion, be like Khalil Gibran. You have a home. It's your creativity and your ability to express your creativity. Sit in your room, write 10 lines of poetry, and then call your friends and share those poems with them. That is your home. The problem is none of us have any homes. There is no place we can go to release some of the pressures that live inside us due to society, due to our own incompetence, because that's what it means to be human. We are incompetent. If you look at whatever it is that you want to do in life, if you want to write a sentence, if you want to write a paragraph, you need to know the alphabets. Then you need to know how to put the alphabets together to create a word. Then you need to put the words together to create a sentence. Everything we do in life, it has required a good amount of training. We walk so casually and easily now. Well, there was a time you just laid on your back. All you could do was to roll. Then with great effort, you sat up. Then you stood up. Then you took baby steps and you fell and you cried. Then you were able to just start walking. Then you were able to run and then to sprint. All these took many, many, many months of training. Life is very much the same. Which means that every time you enter any branch of life, it's like walking. You're going to fall. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to cry. And very much like Edward Munch's painting, The Scream, you're going to scream and you realize no one's going to care. And in pain, you'll, for the first time, come to realize pain makes you all alone. And when you're all alone, for the longest time in our history, you would open the Bible, you would open the Rig Veda, you would open the Quran, you would go to a church or a mosque or a synagogue or a temple, you would sit, close your eyes, cry, pray, and you would just assume that God is listening to you. We have no choice but to make stupid, dumb mistakes. That is what we do all the time. But once you catch yourself, do you have a home to go and repent and find acceptance and forgiveness? If you don't have that, start working on creating an environment where you can call it home. If you have it, use it. See, when I was very, very young, I was, 18, 19, 20. I met this guy, Hussein. And you guys know, you've been in my classes for many, many years. He was a young kid. He was maybe 15, 16 years older than I was. But this was a seasoned man. I didn't much care for him at the beginning. But little by little, what happened is, what lived inside him, which was his love for philosophy, his love for religion, his love for thinking. As I sat with him more, as we had food, as we had coffee, as we had tea, as we had family gatherings, what lived inside him began to slowly come inside me and begin to live inside me. And there came a point where I realized that if I'm not around him, my life is absolutely meaningless. If I'm having a conversation, if he's not at the very center of the conversation is meaningless. I had found myself a home at a very, very young age, and it was a good home. It wasn't Snoop Dogg or Miley Cyrus or friends who just spoke about stupid things. It was deep and it was rich. It's like you're 15 and your best friend is Mahatma Gandhi, or your best friend is Malcolm X. These people just push you to age, mature quickly. And so, whenever I had any issues in my life, regardless of the time, I would call and I would just drive to his house. He had a shop. I would be there all the time. And it continued for about 10 years. Every time my wife and I sit and talk, I always tell her, I am where I am in life because of him. He shaped me. And it's good for someone who is mature to shape you. It's a good home to be in. So again, the short answer to your very, very difficult question, why are human beings so stupid and why do we do stupid things all the time? That's just the name of the game. It's like walking into a boxing ring and saying, well, why is this guy punching me? Well, it's a boxing ring. Life is like a boxing ring. All these people in this classroom, they have the potential to backstab you. Your body has the potential of betraying you. Your friends have the potential of betraying you. Life has the potential of disappointing every hope and dreams that you have inside you. That's just the way things are. You're never going to beat life. It's impossible. But you could find or create a place where you can find shelter. In case of a storm, just go sit in there for a while. And though you may think I'm saying things that are exotic, they really aren't. If you even read the Gospel of John, there are all these beautiful passages. You just have to kind of read between the lines, sit back, and just kind of reflect on some of the things that supposedly Jesus has said. Like, only through me you can get to God. And what he's saying, for those of you who mourn, who hunger for justice or truth or for God or whatever it is, find someone, where you can sit with them, they can shelter you, protect you, take care of you for a while, and then when the job is done, then you can go through them. You'll go to the destination. Jesus is nothing but a stepping stone. For some people, that stepping stone is fine, and that's okay. But if you happen to have a bigger capacity, where you realize that Jesus is a temporary home, your real home is this thing called the kingdom of God, for example, that's fine too. But find a home, because mistakes are never going to end.
Your question.
The question that when someone very close dies, very close to you passes away, like a father or a mother or a sibling, maybe even a husband or a wife with whom you've been for 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, there's a great amount of intense grieving that's taking place inside you. And what happens when you're in a grieving mode is that you're pushed to ask very, very, very difficult questions. And you don't have to have people pass in your life to find yourself in a grieving mode. You're 20, one day you just wake up, you look yourself in the mirror and you realize, oh my God, I'm 65. And you say, how the hell did this happen? There was a movie with Michael Douglas, Morgan Freeman, and a few other people. I think it's called Being Alone or something. He's supposed to get married to this 30-year-old. Michael Douglas is about 70. His friends keep making fun of him. You're almost dead. You're like a corpse, but you're marrying, this young thing. What's wrong with you? And, it's his way of feeling young once again. I mean, the movie doesn't say that, but that's really what it is in some ways. These four old men are standing in a room, and he's unpacking or putting stuff in his suitcase, and he gets really, really upset at some point, and he says, how the hell did this happen? I was 20 just a couple days ago. Now I'm 70. How did it happen? Why did it happen? And whenever you're in a grieving mode, what you're basically asking or wanting without perhaps knowing is that the thing that you have lost, you want it back. You have lost a husband, you want him back. You have lost a son or a daughter. You want them back. You've lost youth, abilities. You want those things back. But the only thing grieving does is that it forces you to think. And initially you won't like what you see, because you see a great many number of mistakes that you have committed. You have wasted in your life, your abilities. But if you're able, and not very many people are lucky, but if you have the tools to create those mistakes that you have caught about yourself, if you have the tools to grind them, to process them and turn them into wisdom, that's your home. If not, when you catch yourself, you'll get really, really angry. You'll try to make some adjustments, it won't work. Then you'll get really, really depressed. Then you try to talk to your friends, that won't work. And then you have depression plus immense, intense loneliness. And like Noah, every human being on this planet has died underwater. The only person living is you, and you have no one. And, in a culture such as this, you either do drugs, you go to Kaiser, get medicated, you drink, you do porn, you get into fights, you commit suicide, or what people have been doing for the longest time in our history is that they have a support system where grief ultimately, morphs into nuggets of wisdom that saves you and saves your community. But your question is not so much about that. Your question is, since human beings have a tendency of just forgetting, is there a way to remember? Now, there are things that are not worth remembering. There are things that you want to forget because intellectually they're just silly. So what you need to understand is this. You have a feeling about someone, and let's say that feeling comes to this thing called love, and you have this reflection, the ability to think well. You know that this person is no good for you. What has more power over you is feelings. Feelings will always destroy the way you think about things. Feelings will make sure that you forget your own insights and wisdom. And sometimes you forget for months, if not years. All of us in this class, we have had moments where you wake up and you say, I'm too old to take stupid classes. But then what happens? Well, the social fears set in. It's something that Sigmund Freud used to talk about. It's what they call psychosexual, which is all of us are infants in the sense that you see something out there, you assume that it's going to give you a good amount of pleasure, and you pursue it. That's what children do. And they are relentless. They will bug the hell out of you until they are satisfied. And Kevin knows this really, really well. Okay, you get home, you're exhausted. Your daughter sees that you're limping, and she says, I want dancing shoes. And he says, well, can we wait till tomorrow? No, I want it right now. I've been waiting for 5 seconds. Well, can we wait till tomorrow? No. And so he has no choice but to drive her to Target, buy dancing shoes. Okay. So her needs are satisfied. Now, since human beings, up to the time that they die, have no choice but to pursue these pleasures, well, how do you live in a society of 400 million people where everyone is trying to pursue and gratify a pleasure? Well, you need a social structure. You need a superego. You need a system that says, if you want to get there, you need to wait 10 minutes. If you aren't able to wait for 10 minutes, well, someone will smack you. Okay? And all of a sudden, and remember now, let's say you want to go into the field of philosophy. That is where your passion is. And then you say to yourself, am I going to be able to get a job? Am I going to pay rent? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? And all of a sudden, the passion that was both this and you knew it was good for you, society comes in and says no. So, going back, there are certain things that are really worth just forgetting. There are certain things that you should forget because you don't have the capacity. There are certain things you should forget because you're in the wrong stage. Let me give you an example. I'm not saying that you should. It may be helpful. Let's say you are a 25-year-old woman, okay? And you have come to realize that you really, truly enjoy thinking deeply about things. And you go to school, and now after 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 years, you have your PhD in philosophy. You look yourself in the mirror and you say, I'm 32. My best companions up to this point have been Socrates, Plato, and Sartre, and Hume, and Descartes, and these people. I want a physical companion. And you're a woman, so you have some other issues, which is the most important is your body says, are you going to give me a baby or not? What's wrong with you? Give me a baby. You're going to be 40. You know, your eggs are going to get old, stale, they won't hatch. And so you realize that your body is kind of victimizing or pushing you around. And so you go on these dating apps and you get a click. You go out with some guy and you say, so have you heard about Plato? I listen to R&B. Oh, okay. Well, how about like Sartre? He's like an existential philosopher. No, I feel, therefore I exist. The hell is that? But he's a good-looking guy. He's got a good job. He's not really a good companion, intellectually or emotionally or spiritually. But what you say, he makes money. He has a house. He's got 5 cars. Why not?